The sleek research vessel descended through Earth's atmosphere under the cover of darkness, its advanced cloaking systems making it appear as nothing more than a passing cloud to human detection systems. Inside, Dr. Blue adjusted his appearance-altering field one final time, ensuring his true form remained hidden beneath the holographic disguise of a tall, thin human scientist. "Remember," he told his research team, "we are here as part of the cultural exchange program. Nothing more." His words carried weight, but inside, excitement made his secondary heart beat faster. After years of preparation, they would finally have access to living human genetic samples. The landing went smoothly. Their ship, now disguised as a standard research facility, touched down in a remote area of Montana. Local officials had been told it was a new international research center, part of the growing cooperation between different human nations. None suspected it was actually the first alien research base on Earth. 3 days later, Dr. Blue met Dr. Smith, a leading human geneticist who would be working with their team. Smith was shorter than most humans, with graying hair and keen eyes that seemed to notice everything. As they shook hands, Dr. Blue wondered if his grip was correct. They had practiced human customs for months, but actual interaction was different. "Your facility is impressive," Dr. Smith said, looking around the main laboratory. "I've never seen some of this equipment before." "New prototypes," Dr. Blue replied smoothly, using the cover story they had prepared. "From private research firms in Europe." The first few weeks went according to plan. They collected samples, ran tests, and maintained their cover as international scientists. But then they found something strange. Dr. Blue was working late one night, examining human DNA sequences when his scanner detected an anomaly. At first, he thought it was an error. He ran the test again and again. Each time, the result was the same. "This can't be right," he muttered, calling up comparison data from other species. The scanner showed patterns in human DNA that defied natural evolution. Complex mathematical sequences were hidden in what humans called junk DNA, parts they thought had no purpose. He was so absorbed in his work that he didn't notice Dr. Smith standing in the doorway. "Finding something interesting?" Smith asked, making Dr. Blue jump slightly. "Oh, just routine analysis," Dr. Blue said quickly, but he could tell from Smith's expression that the human scientist wasn't entirely convinced. The next day, Dr. Blue sent an encrypted message to his superiors. "Human genetic structure shows signs of artificial enhancement. Origin unknown. Request permission to deepen investigation." The response came quickly. "Permission granted. Maintain cover at all costs. If humans discover their true nature, consequences could be severe." Over the next few days, more anomalies appeared. The human genome contained sequences that looked like computer code, mathematical constants that couldn't have occurred naturally, and patterns that suggested deliberate design rather than evolution. Dr. Smith began asking more questions. He noticed how their international team never made video calls home, how some of their equipment seemed to work on principles he couldn't understand, and how they sometimes used words that weren't quite right for native English speakers. One evening, as Dr. Blue was examining a particularly interesting DNA sequence, his holographic disguise flickered briefly. He didn't notice, but in the reflection of a darkened screen, Dr. Smith saw it happen. The human scientist said nothing, but his eyes narrowed thoughtfully. That night, Dr. Smith made a phone call to an unlisted number. "Something's not right here," he said quietly. "These scientists, I don't think they're from Earth at all. And they're very interested in our DNA." As he ended the call, Dr. Smith looked out his window at the research facility glowing in the distance. Whatever these visitors were looking for in human DNA, he intended to find out. But first, he needed proof, and that would mean getting closer to Dr. Blue and his mysterious team. Meanwhile, in his private lab, Dr. Blue stared at his latest results with a mixture of awe and fear. If what he was seeing was correct, humans weren't what they appeared to be either. Not by a long shot. The morning sun cast long shadows across the laboratory as Dr. Blue stared at his computer screen. He hadn't slept in 3 days, not that his species needed much sleep anyway. What he had found in the human DNA samples kept him awake, his mind racing with possibilities. "Computer, run the sequence analysis again," he commanded. The machine hummed softly, processing the data. The results were always the same. Hidden within human DNA was a complex pattern of codes that looked more like computer programming than natural evolution. A soft knock at the door made him quickly switch screens. Dr. Smith walked in, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you might need this," he said, placing 1 cup near Dr. Blue. "Thank you," Dr. Blue replied, trying to remember how humans drank their beverages. He had studied Earth customs extensively, but these small details still troubled him. Dr. Smith sat down nearby, sipping his coffee while watching Dr. Blue's screen. "You know," he said casually, "I've been looking at some interesting patterns in our recent samples, things that don't quite make sense." Dr. Blue's heart skipped a beat. "Oh," he tried to sound casual. "Yes," Smith continued. "It's almost as if someone wrote a message in our genes, like a signature left by, well, someone not from around here." The coffee cup in Dr. Blue's hand trembled slightly. He set it down before it could spill. "That's an interesting theory," he managed to say. "Isn't it?" Smith leaned forward. "Almost as interesting as how your image sometimes flickers when you're tired." The room grew very quiet. Dr. Blue's holographic disguise wavered for a moment as his concentration slipped. There was no point in denying it anymore. "How long have you known?" he asked. "About 2 weeks," Smith answered. "But that's not important right now. What's important is what you found in our DNA. Because I found something too, and I think we need to work together." Dr. Blue hesitated, then pressed a button on his wrist device. His human appearance faded, revealing his true form, tall with bluish-gray skin and large dark eyes. "My superiors will not be happy about this," he said. "I haven't told anyone else," Smith assured him. "But look at this." He pulled out a data pad and showed Dr. Blue his own research. "These sequences here, they're not random. They're encrypted messages." Together, they spent the next hours comparing notes. What they discovered was astounding. The human genome contained vast amounts of hidden information, far beyond anything Dr. Blue's people had ever seen. It wasn't just complex, it was impossible, at least according to known science. "These patterns," Dr. Blue explained, pointing to a particular sequence, "they match mathematical constants that govern the universe, but they're arranged in a way that suggests deliberate planning. Your species didn't evolve naturally." "We were engineered," Smith said quietly. "But by whom? And why?" Before Dr. Blue could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. His team rushed into the lab, their own disguises dropping in their panic. "The data," one of them shouted. "It's activating." On screens throughout the lab, DNA sequences were lighting up like Christmas trees. Something was happening to human DNA all around the world, something that had been waiting to happen for a very long time. Dr. Blue's communicator buzzed urgently. A message from his superiors flashed across the screen. "Terminate research immediately. Destroy all samples. Human species presents level threat to galactic security." He looked at Dr. Smith, who was watching the screens with a mixture of fear and fascination. Whatever had been hidden in human DNA was beginning to wake up. "We don't have much time," Dr. Blue said. "Your people, humanity, you're carrying something inside you, something powerful, something that was put there long ago." "What is it?" Smith asked. "I don't know," Dr. Blue replied honestly. "But I think we're about to find out. And my people are terrified of what that might mean." Outside the lab, in cities and towns across Earth, people were beginning to experience strange sensations. Humanity's hidden potential was finally starting to emerge, and nothing would ever be the same again. The underground lab was quiet except for the soft hum of computers. Dr. Blue and Dr. Smith had been working nonstop for 48 hours, trying to decode more of the strange messages hidden in human DNA. Empty coffee cups littered their workstation, though Dr. Blue had finally stopped pretending to drink his. "Look at this," Dr. Smith said suddenly, pointing to his screen. "These sequences aren't just random patterns. They're coordinates." Dr. Blue moved closer, his tall frame casting a shadow over the display. The genetic code they were studying had transformed into a series of numbers that matched specific locations on Earth. Antarctica, the Sahara Desert, the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. Dr. Blue read aloud. "These aren't random places. They form a pattern." Just then, Dr. Miller, another human scientist they had trusted with their secret, burst into the room. "You need to see this," she said, bringing up satellite images on the main screen. "Something's happening at those coordinates." The images showed strange structures emerging from beneath the ice, sand, and water. Ancient buildings and machines, hidden for thousands of years, were activating in response to the changes in human DNA. "It's like they were waiting," Dr. Miller whispered, "waiting for humans to reach a certain point in their development." Dr. Blue's communication device buzzed again. His people were demanding updates, but he had stopped responding. What they were discovering was too important to shut down. "There's more," he said, bringing up his own research. "The species that created humans, we found traces of them before. My people called them the Builders. They vanished from the galaxy 50,000 years ago, leaving only myths and ruins." Dr. Smith leaned back in his chair, trying to process this information. "You're saying these Builders made us? Engineered the human race?" "Yes," Dr. Blue replied. "But not just made you. They packed your DNA with information, technology, and abilities that would stay dormant until needed. You were designed to be their legacy." The room grew quiet as the implications sank in. Humanity wasn't just another species that evolved on a small blue planet. They were created with a purpose. Suddenly, alarms blared through the facility. Security monitors showed military vehicles approaching. Someone had talked. "They're here for the research," Dr. Miller said, quickly beginning to copy files. "World governments must have detected the ancient structures activating." Dr. Blue moved swiftly to protect their most crucial findings. "There's something else you need to know," he said urgently. "The Builders didn't just vanish. They were running from something terrible that they couldn't defeat." "What do you mean?" Dr. Smith asked, helping to secure their data. "Your DNA contains messages about an ancient enemy, a threat to all life in the galaxy. The Builders couldn't fight it directly, so they created humanity as a backup plan. You were designed to be warriors, protectors with abilities and knowledge hidden in your genes until the right moment." The sound of boots in the hallway grew closer. They had only minutes left. "That's why my people are so afraid," Dr. Blue continued. "They've realized what you are. The human race isn't just a simple species. You're living weapons, created by the most advanced civilization the galaxy has ever known." Dr. Miller finished copying the last files just as the lab doors burst open. Armed soldiers poured in, weapons raised. "Everyone stay where you are," a commanding voice shouted. "This facility is now under government control." Dr. Blue's holographic disguise flickered and failed completely, causing several soldiers to step back in shock. But instead of raising their weapons, the squad leader lowered his. "Sir," he said into his radio, "you're going to want to see this. And Dr. Smith, Dr. Miller, your presence is requested at the Pentagon. Something's happening worldwide, and we need answers." As they were led out of the lab, Dr. Blue looked at his human friends. "This is just the beginning," he said quietly. "The real test is still to come." Around the world, more ancient structures were awakening. Humanity's true purpose was about to be revealed, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Pentagon's underground conference room buzzed with nervous energy. Screens covered every wall, showing news feeds from around the world. Dr. Smith, Dr. Miller, and Dr. Blue sat at a large table with military leaders and government officials, watching as history unfolded. It started in Singapore, General Roberts explained, pointing to one screen. A young student suddenly showed the ability to understand and speak every language she heard. Then in Brazil, a farmer began controlling plant growth with his mind. Now we're getting reports from every continent. Dr. Blue studied the footage carefully. The dormant genes are activating faster than expected, he said. Earth's changing environment must have triggered them. On the screens, more stories poured in. A firefighter in Canada who could walk through flames unharmed. A deep-sea diver in Australia who no longer needed oxygen tanks. A child in Egypt who could see through walls. They're not random abilities, Dr. Miller observed, looking through data on her tablet. Each awakening seems designed to help protect or preserve life. Just like you said, they were meant to be guardians. Suddenly, alarms blared through the building. One of the screens showed a massive object entering Earth's atmosphere. It wasn't a meteor. "That's a ship from my world," Dr. Blue said, his voice tight with concern. "A warship." General Roberts grabbed his phone, barking orders to ready Earth's defenses. But Dr. Smith raised his hand. "Wait," he said. "Look at this." Everyone turned to where he was pointing. Outside the Pentagon, the ground had begun to glow with strange symbols. Similar reports were coming in from the other awakened sites around the world. The ancient defense systems were activating. "It's responding to the threat," Dr. Blue explained. "The builders left more than just changed DNA. They left tools to help humanity protect itself." Dr. Miller, who had been quiet for a while, suddenly gasped. Her hands were glowing with a soft blue light. I can see it," she whispered. "The patterns, the connections. Everything is linked together." Throughout the building, other people were experiencing similar awakenings. Each person's DNA was activating in unique ways, giving them abilities that seemed impossible. "Your people need to call back that warship," Dr. Smith told Dr. Blue urgently. "These changes can't be stopped now. If they attack, Earth's defenses will respond automatically." Dr. Blue tried to contact his superiors, but they had already made their decision. The alien warship launched what looked like a massive energy pulse toward Earth. Before it could hit, thousands of points of light shot up from the ancient sites around the planet. They formed a shield in the upper atmosphere, absorbing the attack completely. "That's impossible," one of the military officials whispered. "Our satellites show that shield is made of pure energy, but it's stable. It defies every law of physics we know." "Not the builders' physics," Dr. Blue said quietly. "They understood things about the universe that even my people never discovered, and they programmed that knowledge into human DNA." More alien ships appeared in orbit, but they didn't attack. They seemed to be waiting, watching. Dr. Miller's glow had spread, covering her in a network of light that looked like a star map. "There's something else," she said. "Something bigger coming. I can feel it in the changes. We weren't just made to protect Earth." Dr. Smith looked at the screens showing awakening humans around the world, then at Dr. Blue. "The ancient enemy your people feared. The one the builders were running from. It's returning, isn't it?" Dr. Blue nodded slowly. "The builders knew they would come back eventually. That's why they created humanity. Not just as guardians, but as warriors. The last line of defense for all life in the galaxy." Outside, the shield above Earth shimmered like an aurora. Humanity was changing, awakening to its true purpose. But as Dr. Miller's star map showed, something was stirring in the dark spaces between galaxies. The real test was about to begin. Dr. Miller's glowing form cast strange shadows on the Pentagon's walls as she traced patterns in the air. The star map flowing from her DNA had grown more detailed, showing movement at the edges of known space. "They're coming," she said, her voice distant. "The things that hunted the builders. I can see them now." Dr. Blue stood beside her, his alien features reflecting the blue light of her powers. Can you show us what they look like? Miller nodded, and the light from her hands formed a three-dimensional image in the center of the room. Everyone present stepped back in horror. The creatures were massive, like living shadows that devoured light itself. "The Void Hunters," Dr. Blue whispered. "They're not just stories after all." General Roberts stepped forward, his face grim. "How long do we have?" 3 months, Miller answered, the star map swirling around her. "They're moving faster than light, but differently than our ships. They fold space itself." Dr. Smith was studying data from activated sites around the world. "The ancient defense systems," he said suddenly. "They're not just weapons. They're teaching tools." He brought up footage from various locations. People near the activated sites were discovering they could interface with the ancient technology naturally, as if they had known how all along. "It's all connected," Dr. Blue realized. "The builders didn't just give humans special abilities. They gave you their knowledge, their technology, their understanding of the universe, all locked in your DNA, waiting for this moment." The room's main screen lit up with an urgent message. More alien ships had arrived in orbit, but these were different from Dr. Blue's people. They were ancient, covered in symbols that matched those appearing on Earth. "Builder ships," Dr. Blue breathed. "They've been waiting, hidden throughout the galaxy, programmed to return when humanity awakened." Dr. Miller touched one of the symbols floating around her, and suddenly the room filled with a holographic message. A figure appeared, tall, glowing, clearly one of the builders. "If you are seeing this," the figure said, "then the threat has returned, and our plan has activated. Humanity was our greatest creation, designed not just to survive the Void Hunters, but to defeat them. Every human carries within them a piece of our legacy, our knowledge, our power. Apart, you are strong. Together, you are unstoppable." The message continued, explaining how the builders had seeded their knowledge and power throughout human DNA, creating a species that could evolve and adapt rapidly when needed. The ancient ships in orbit were humanity's inheritance, waiting to be claimed. "Your civilization has grown differently than we planned," the builder's message said. "But perhaps that is better. You have developed your own way, your own strength. Now it is time to awaken fully and take your place as guardians of life itself." As the message faded, reports flooded in from around the world. People everywhere were discovering new abilities, accessing ancient knowledge hidden in their genes. Some could manipulate energy, others could heal by touch, and still others found they could interface with the builder ships in orbit. "We need to unite the world's governments," General Roberts said. "This isn't just about Earth anymore. We're facing a threat to all life, everywhere." Dr. Blue's communication device buzzed. His people had seen everything through their orbital ships. They were offering an alliance, finally understanding humanity's true purpose. "The builders weren't just running from the Void Hunters," Dr. Smith said, looking at newly decoded DNA sequences. "They were buying time, preparing a counterattack. They built that counterattack into us." Dr. Miller's star map suddenly pulsed with urgent light. "They're accelerating," she warned. "The Void Hunters. They can sense that we're awakening. They're coming faster now." Around the world, the ancient sites pulsed with energy. The builder ships in orbit began powering up. Humanity was about to face its first real test as guardians of the galaxy, and time was running out. "We're not ready," General Roberts said. "No," Dr. Blue replied, watching as more humans awakened to their true potential. "But you will be. You were designed for this moment. Everything that humanity is, everything you can become. It all leads to this." The Earth's sky had never looked so crowded. Thousands of alien ships hung in orbit like new stars, some belonging to Dr. Blue's people, others being the ancient builder vessels. Military leaders from around the world gathered in the Pentagon's command center, watching as more ships arrived every hour. Dr. Miller stood at the center of the room, her glowing form now showing not just star maps, but the movements of entire fleets. "The Void Hunters have split into 3 groups," she reported. They're trying to surround our solar system. Dr. Smith worked nearby at a console, his own newly awakened abilities letting him process information at impossible speeds. The builder ships are responding to more people, he said. We've got crews learning to operate them within hours instead of days now. A flash of light filled the room as more emergency transmissions arrived. Dr. Blue's people had made their final decision. No, Dr. Blue said, reading the message. They're going to try to destroy Earth. Everyone turned to look at him. He held up his communication device, showing the orders. My leaders think if they destroy humanity now, the Void Hunters might spare the rest of the galaxy. They're sending their entire battle fleet. General Roberts immediately began issuing orders to Earth's defense forces, but Dr. Miller raised her hand. Wait, she said. Look. The glowing symbols around her shifted, showing a new pattern. All around Earth, the activated builder sites were pulsing in sync. Millions of awakened humans were connecting to the ancient defense network at once. We don't need to fight, Dr. Miller explained. We can show them the truth. She reached out with her power, connecting to the builder network. Dr. Smith and dozens of other awakened humans around the world did the same. Together, they activated something the builders had left behind. A message meant for exactly this moment. Every ship in orbit, whether alien or builder, received the same transmission. It showed the full history of the builders' plan, their battles with the Void Hunters, and why they had created humanity. The message ended with proof that the Void Hunters couldn't be stopped by normal weapons or technology. They could only be defeated by beings specifically designed to fight them, humans. In orbit, Dr. Blue's people's battle fleet arrived, weapons ready, but they hesitated as the message played on every screen and in every mind. They have to choose, Dr. Blue said quietly. Help humanity and face the Void Hunters together, or try to destroy Earth and face them alone. The command center fell silent as everyone waited. Dr. Miller's star map showed the Void Hunters getting closer, their dark forms consuming everything in their path. Finally, the alien fleet moved, but instead of attacking, they took up defensive positions around Earth. They're protecting us, General Roberts said, surprised. No, Dr. Smith corrected him, looking at the data. They're protecting themselves. We're their only hope against what's coming. Dr. Blue received a new message from his leaders. They were offering full alliance with Earth, combining their technology with humanity's awakening powers in the builder ships. There's something else, Dr. Miller said suddenly. Her glow intensified as she accessed deeper layers of the builder network. The defense systems, the ships, the powers in our DNA, they're all parts of a larger weapon, something that can destroy the Void Hunters forever. But, Dr. Smith asked, sensing her concern, but it needs all of humanity working together to power it. Every awakened human, every builder ship, every piece of ancient technology, all working in perfect sync. General Roberts looked at the reports coming in from around the world. Millions of people were still awakening to their powers. Some were scared, others excited, but all of them could feel what was coming. Can we do it? He asked. Dr. Blue looked at his former research subjects, now Earth's greatest hope. The builders designed you for this moment. Every step of human evolution, every struggle, every triumph. It was all preparation for this choice. Dr. Miller's star map pulsed with urgent warning. The Void Hunters were accelerating again, sensing the gathering power of their ancient enemy's final weapon. The time for humanity to make its choice had come. Space itself seemed to darken as the Void Hunters approached the solar system. Through Dr. Miller's glowing star map, everyone in the Pentagon's command center could see their massive forms, like living black holes consuming light and matter in their path. All builder ships report ready, Dr. Smith announced, his fingers flying over glowing controls that responded to his thoughts. Awakened humans worldwide are linking to the defense network. Dr. Blue stood watching Earth's transformation through the command center's windows. The planet glowed with lines of power connecting the ancient builder sites, like bright veins wrapping around the world. His own people's ships had joined the builder vessels in orbit, forming a protective ring around Earth. The Void Hunters will reach our outer defense line in 10 minutes, Dr. Miller reported, her form now blazing so bright it was hard to look at directly. All human DNA is fully activated. We're as ready as we'll ever be. General Roberts received confirmation from world leaders. Every nation had agreed to the plan. Humanity would face this threat united, just as the builders had intended. "Begin the sequence," he ordered. Dr. Miller raised her hands, connecting to the builder network. Around the world, millions of awakened humans did the same. The ancient defense systems pulsed with power, and the builder ships in orbit began to glow. "Look at the readings," Dr. Blue said in awe. "The energy levels are beyond anything my people have ever seen." The Void Hunters struck first, sending waves of dark energy that distorted space itself. But the combined shield of human power and builder technology held firm. Dr. Smith monitored the defense network as humanity began its counterattack. "Every human on Earth is contributing their energy," he reported. "The builder's weapon is charging." Through the star map, they watched as the Void Hunters recoiled for the first time in their ancient history. They had never encountered prey that could resist them before. "Now," Dr. Miller shouted. Millions of humans focused their power at once. The builder ships channeled the energy, combining it with their ancient technology. A wave of pure golden light erupted from Earth, spreading out through space like a new sun being born. The Void Hunters tried to retreat, but they couldn't escape. The light touched them, and for the first time, the galaxy heard their screams. The creatures that had hunted the builders, that had devoured countless civilizations, were finally meeting their match. "It's working," Dr. Blue whispered. "The builder's plan, it actually worked." The golden wave continued to spread, burning away the Void Hunters wherever it found them. Dr. Miller's star map showed their dark forms dissolving, unable to resist the combined power of humanity and builder technology. When it was over, the galaxy seemed brighter somehow. The Void Hunters were gone, destroyed by the very weapons the builders had hidden within human DNA. "We did it," General Roberts said quietly. "We actually did it." But Dr. Miller was shaking her head, still connected to the builder network. "This wasn't the end," she said. "It was just the beginning." Dr. Smith looked up from his readings. "She's right. The powers we've awakened, the knowledge we've gained, the builders didn't just make us to be weapons. They made us to be guardians." Dr. Blue received a final message from his people. They were officially recognizing Earth as the inheritors of the builder's legacy. Humanity would take its place among the stars not as a primitive species, but as protectors of life itself. "What happens now?" General Roberts asked. Dr. Miller's glow softened as she showed them new star maps. "There are more builder sites out there, on other worlds. More secrets to find, more knowledge to recover. And," she paused, "more threats to face. The Void Hunters weren't the only danger the builders fought." Dr. Smith stood looking at the builder ships in orbit, now permanently bound to human crews. "Then we'll face them too," he said simply. "That's what we were made for." Dr. Blue watched as golden light continued to pulse through the human defense network, stronger than ever. His research into human DNA had started all this, but humanity had proved to be far more than just an experiment. They had become exactly what the builders had hoped for: guardians of all life, protectors of the galaxy itself. And this was just their first step into a much larger universe.